What's going on, guys? Okay, it looks like we're live in this window. We're live in this window. Good deal. Hope everyone had a great day. We are nearing the end of the Hermes. This lighting is a little bit odd, isn't it? Is that better? Or, ooh, I don't like that. Hold on, guys. Let me get this reasonable. Yeah, okay, I can live with that. What was I talking about? We're nearing the end of this Hermes deep dive, the Corpus Hermeticum. There's been some amazing stuff, and there's been some extraneous kind of gobbledygook about God that kind of went on a little bit too long. But I think the real essence of the message here, that it is possible to know things about the deeper strata of the universe and our origins and our destiny than the modern deterministic uber materialist ontological model makes space for, right? And it's really rough territory to get into. Just today I saw another video where somebody was just making stuff up about ancient knowledge. And so the effect that has is that people with common sense see that and they go, all these people that say this crap are full of it. We're not. I'm not. I scrutinize everything to death. I try to disprove everything. And the reality is, if you do that, you're still left with stuff that stands up, By the way, also, before we get into it, speaking of Hermes in the modern day, Michael Levin is a scientist. He works a lot in bioelectricity and morphology. And he is basically a modern day Hermes. We are at a crossroads, and Hermes is met at crossroads, and Levin is there at the crossroads with the keys to a new paradigm. And he's being largely ignored in the mainstream. So I want to do my little bit that I can to encourage people to check him out. He was just on the Theory of Everything podcast again, talking about non-neural intelligence. And it's, I think, almost 2 hours long. And sorry if I'm a little bit squirmy. I actually went fishing today and fell down and grabbed a cactus. And so I'm all stabbed up and bruised and kind of hurt my back too. So a little bit beat up. Okay though, it was a great day. We have this marvelous stream next door, and I wanted to see if there were trout. So my son's first fishing, there are no trout, but we went fishing for the first time and discovered these. I made videos. You guys can check them out in a couple days. It's just right, it's on our property. And I noticed these boulders are almost monolith size, that they were walls, that they were part of walls that have been overgrown. And I started looking around, and I found foundations to old Incan ruins everywhere, and really a cool day. So anyways, what I was saying is go check out Michael Levin, because it's super important, and he's not getting the recognition he deserves. And it's not just that he deserves. It's necessary for people to see these developments, and it's not just him. The Orc theory, Penrose and Hammeroff, there's tons of progress being made on that. A theory I've been working on that has to do with Calabi-Yau structures and the Euler formula and Fourier transforms, and actually trying to find the layer of physics that has been overlooked where the universal mind actually has its function. And it's looking like, folded up into these Calabi-Yau structures, this layer probably actually does exist. And so that's interesting. If you want more information about that, check out my AI videos, because that's kind of how I'm sleuthing this due to my lack of formal training in mathematics and physics, but a weird intuitive capacity to sort of navigate those realms. AI is able to bolster me as if I actually had the education I need to do the work that I'm trying to do. So anyways, let me check in with the chat one more time, make sure the audio is okay. Sheldrake? I don't. I just see the name Sheldrake. I don't see any context. I was attacked by jumping cactus. Yeah, that cactus got me bad, man. It was not pretty. Also, I want to thank you guys that have attended the music streams, which I'm doing after this stream, another one because I am fundraising for surgeries, and it's actually gone quite well, better than expected, so I wanted to thank everyone that's contributed to that and invite everybody else. I'm still working out the bugs in the sound, man. It's really tough for a caveman musician like me that used to use amplifiers and guitars and sound men and stuff. But I'm getting there, I think. Okay, so we are entering into the 14th book of Hermes Trismegistus of Operation and Sense. I have not gone ahead and looked at this, but I have a feeling it's going to have to do with actual technical magic, which is something, by the way, I started to kind of talk about all these scientific developments that kind of support all this stuff. One of them has to do with that, actually. There have been studies done, that have now been peer-reviewed and repeated many, many times, because I think the establishment scientists really wanted to debunk. I was skeptical even, but random number generators that work on quantum systems have been influenced by people deliberately, as well as the trajectory of photons. So there is some connection between our will and our consciousness and subatomic particles. That's an established scientific fact at this point. So, and that's really important, like Jesus said in the Bible, he who hath faith can move mountains or whatever, something like that. You don't want faith. Faith, to me at least, is useless. You want certainty, and having that knowledge, that confirmation on a physical, technical, deterministic, mechanical level, to me, is extremely helpful and important. Because, in order for us to sort of conform to this model, not that we should unless it is organic and natural to do so, but we have to actually operate on certainty and not faith. And so thank you, science, for... isn't this hilarious, too? Science... I thought this particularly about evolution the other day. Evolution has been one of the main go-tos when people try to disprove, say, there's no God. There's no intelligence, at least, teleology. I don't really believe in God in the Christian sense or the Muslim, the sky God thing. An integrated intelligence of some kind, sure. But evolution was meant to disprove all that, and it's kind of been the cornerstone of that. But with the recent discoveries in morphology, evolution is actually, specifically these adaptations that are response-driven that have occurred in elephants and trees and rattlesnakes and some other things, are the closest thing to proof we have, aside from all of the evidence of non-neural cognition, which is all over the place now. Anyways, the irony I was getting at is that evolution is actually providing the best evidence at this point for this facet of our existence that they have tried so hard to disprove for so long. Everything contains its contradiction. They should have been more careful. Thou hast well explained these things, Father. This is Thoth talking to Hermes. I'm sorry, you guys in the vertical don't have a screen share still. I don't know what happened to it. I can't get it back. Teach me furthermore these things, for thou sayest that science and art were the operations of the rational. But now thou sayest the beasts are unreasonable, and for want of reason. Both are, and are called brutes, so that by this reason it must needs follow that unreasonable creatures partake not of science or art, because they come short of reason. Hermes responds, it must needs be so, son. Thoth. Why then, O Father, do we see some unreasonable living creatures use both science and art, as the Pismirus treasure up for themselves food against winter, And the fowls of the air likewise make them nests, and four-footed beasts know their own dens. These things they do, O son, not by science or art, but by nature. For science and art are things that are taught, but none of these brute beasts are taught any of these things. But these things, being natural unto them, are wrought by nature, whereas art and science do not happen unto all, but unto some. This, speaking of evolution, is a great question that I have never gotten a satisfactory answer for. If the cellular organisms in the beginning of the primordial soup and their antecedents had no instinct, how did they survive past their initial existence? They would have done nothing because they would have known, you know what I mean? Where did these instincts come from? And so, that is one of those questions, I think, that kind of backs the Darwinian into a corner, because it is true that we have such highly specialized organisms that would not have had a history at some point to draw on. So, men are musicians. What the fuck is a musician? But not all. Neither are all archers or huntsmen, or the rest, but some of them have learned something by the working of science or art. After the same manner also, if some pismaries did so, and some not, thou mightest well say they gather their food according to science and art. But being they are all led by nature to the same thing, even against their wills, it is manifest they do not do it by science or art. For operations, O Thoth, being unbodily, are in bodies, and work by bodies. Wherefore, O Thoth, inasmuch as they are unbodily, thou must needs say they are immortal. But inasmuch as they cannot act without bodies, I say they are always in a body. For those things that are to anything are for the cause of anything made subject to providence or necessity, cannot possibly remain idle of their own proper operation. For that which is shall ever be, for both the body and the life of it is the same. And by this reason it follows that the bodies also are always, because I affirm that this corporeity is always by the act of operation or for them. By the act and operation or for them. And for although earthly bodies are subject to dissolution, yet these bodies must be the places and the organs and instruments of acts and operations. But the acts or operations are immortal, and that which is immortal is always in act, and therefore always corporification, if it be always. I'm not sure that I'm even totally processing what's being said here. Acts or operations do follow the soul, yet come not suddenly or promiscuously. But some of them come together with being made man, being about brutish or unreasonable things. But the purer operations do insensibly in the change of time work with the oblique part of the soul. And these operations depend upon bodies, and truly that they are corporifying, come from the divine bodies into mortal ones. And so, a lot of the problem here, I think, is translation difficulties, because this is coming from Arabic. And one of the things that I feel like I'm gathering from this, what's sort of being alluded to, is that the process of creation is, in a sense, a matter of imposing limitation. Like if you carve a marble statue, you are taking rock away from it in order to give it definition. And so this thing of, I think you call it obtuse parts of the soul, this is life is a crucible. We are being formatted, we are being perfected through a process of tribulation and pressures, just as coal is, pressurized to create diamonds. And another element that's barely related that I think he made reference to a little bit back, something that occurred to me about the law of necessity, right? We have this foundational Hermetic principle that the law of necessity, or the principle of sufficient reason, drives every process. that things happen because they must, and they happen as they do because they cannot happen any other way. In his book, Morals and Dogma, the 33rd Degree, Southern Commander, or the Commander of the Southern Jurisdiction of the United States, Albert Pike, wrote that they are not just because they are his laws because they are just. Which is not meaning fair. It means that the laws of the universe are predicated such that they are because they must be. And if they were any other way, it wouldn't be possible. And so everything is dictated by necessity. And that would include the entire universal process. And that's what's interesting to me. That this, not just our individual lives, not just the environment, not just the earth, but the entire process must be part of the unfoldment of some grander process. There is some purpose. If the purpose, as many suspect, is that the universe is basically sending probes out, which would be us and everything else, in order to learn about itself, to discover the possibilities that are innate in it, that are expressing. And the culmination of that would be some sort of metamorphosis, presumably, because that's what everything does. So anyways, just wanted to throw that out there because that one line made me think about it. Where were we? Acts or operations do follow the soul, yet come not suddenly or promiscuously, but some of them come together with being made man, being about brutish or unreasonable things. Purer operations do insensibly in the change of time work with the oblique part of the soul, and these operations depend upon bodies. Truly they are corporifying, come from the divine bodies into mortal ones. But every one of them acteth both about the body and the soul, and are present with the soul, even without the body. And they are always acts or operations, but the soul is not always an immortal body, for it can be without a body, but acts as operations cannot be without bodies. This is a sacred speech, son. The body cannot coexist without a soul, consist without a soul. Thoth asks, how meanest thou that, father? Hermes responds, understand it thus, O Thoth, when the soul is separated from the body, there remaineth that same body, and this same body, according to the time of its abode, is actuated or operated in that is dissolved and becomes invisible. And these things the body cannot suffer without act or operation, and consequently there remaineth with the body the same act or operation. This then is the difference between an immortal body and a mortal one, that the immortal one consists of one matter, and so doth not the mortal one, and the immortal one doth, but this suffereth. And everything that acteth or operateth is stronger and ruleth, and that which is actuated or operated is ruled. And that which is ruled directeth and governeth as free, but the other is ruled a servant. Acts or operations do not only act or operate, living or breathing, or ensouled bodies, but also breathless bodies, or without souls, wooden stones and such like, increasing and bearing fruit, ripening, corrupting, rotting, putrefying, and breaking, or working such like things, and whatsoever inanimate bodies can suffer. Act or operation, O son, is called whatsoever is or is made or done, and there are always things made, or rather, all things are made, I think it should say. For the world is never widowed or forsaken of any of those things that are, but being always carried or moved in itself, it is in labor to bring forth the things that are, which shall never be left by it to corruption. Let therefore every act or operation be understood to be always immortal, in what manner or body soever it may be. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, and I realize it almost sounds like gibberish, but it actually isn't. One of the methods, I think, of Hermes' way of teaching is that you have to sow seeds that unfold in the student, in the initiate. Right? So you can't really tell the whole story. Some degree of cryptic communication is necessary because you're not trying to inculcate a dogma into the being of another person. That's not the objective. You are trying to create an implicit unfoldment And one of the ways that that is done is to give one layer of a multi-layered concept. And so he's talking about things rotting and dying and these processes that are always happening, and therefore the processes are eternal. But the things also are eternal, including the bodies. What could possibly be meant by that? Well, on the scale of the macro thermodynamics, information is lost. Bodies dissolve, they go away. On the scale of the quantum, all information is retained. So once that apple is, that apple is always. Any thought or deed also is eternal because the information is not lost. And sound, for example, travels forever. It disperses, but it doesn't really disappear. Also, now that we know what entanglement is, every single gesture, movement, thought, it's not clear whether your thoughts and movements affect the entire universe or if they're being affected and maybe we're all just completely mechanical. I don't believe that. So I'm going to have to go with every single thing you think and do, every movement of energy in the universe impacts literally every other thing in the entire universe due to entanglement. So everything you do is preserved for all of eternity. Everything you think, all that you touch, all that you see is all your life will ever be. But you know what I mean? So this is one of the ways also that this sort of sense of responsibility is imparted to the initiate. You know, once you have this knowledge and this power, you must take careful consideration in how you conduct yourself and the consequences of your actions, because in a sense, this is hell where those things are eternal, you know, unless you create heaven, and then that also is eternal. On another level, it's quite possible that the universe is a quantum loop, that it basically expands until all possibilities are exhausted, the stars run out of fuel, the gravity from black holes eventually even disperses, and then there's nothing to hold the vacuum. It's not even a vacuum, you know, whatever's outside of the universe, and it collapses back in with such intensity that eventually the singularity happens again, because none of the particles change size. They remain the same size, but they still get mushed until they're, you know, billionth of a gazillionth of a whatever. And then you know what I mean? So in that sense as well, it's possible we live the same life and the universe is reconstituted exactly as it was the last time, which is a scary thought. We're doomed to repetition. This is definitely a scientific possibility, and it's a logical possibility, and it could be another level of what Hermes is referencing here. Along those lines, you know, a lot of people dispute quantum loop theory. And Penrose has been right about an awful lot of things that he has been laughed at for decades. So, you know, heuristic bias is always a possibility. You know, just because something happened before doesn't mean it's the case again. But he's got a pretty good record. And also, it's likely that every single particle, say every proton, will eventually collide with antiparticle, and when they're annihilated, there are just photons left behind, which is consistent with the Kabbalistic model that, you know, light, which matter is light in a standing wave, light crystallizes into matter, and eventually it dissolves and returns back to the light, and the process repeats. This is what the tree of life is really about. Now we have some evidence that that's the case. I hope that it doesn't mean that it's exactly the same life over and over again. The problem is that if there were tiny fluctuations, because say there's, you know, chaos in the system. So, for example, if you do an experiment in physics like, you know, a billion times, you'll get an anomaly once. And that's because there's an exception to every rule, there's chaos in every system. And so I've always hoped that, you know, entrainment shows us that we're cycling upwards. All things of a lower cycle chase a higher cycle. So I've always hoped that there's some attractor in hyperspace, as Terence McKenna described, and that each cycle we come closer and closer to perfection. The problem is, if there are anomalies, when the quantum loop recurs, when the singularity happens again, eventually that should disrupt your parents' meeting, and you know what I mean? So we're getting into really murky territory when it comes to quantum loop theory and trying to get out of the possibility that we will literally live the exact same life infinitely. Where were we? For the world is never widowed. We read that. And therefore, every act or operation is immortal. That's true. But some acts or operations be of divine, some of corruptible bodies, some universal, some peculiar, some of the generals, and some of the parts of everything. Divine acts or operations, therefore, there be, and such as work on or operate upon their proper bodies, and these also are perfect, and being upon or in perfect bodies. Particular are they which work by any of the living creatures. Proper be they that work upon any of the things that are. By this discourse, therefore, O son, it is gathered that all things are full of acts or operations, for if necessarily they be in every body, and that there be many bodies in the world, I may very well affirm that there be many other acts or operations. For many times in one body there is one and a second and a third, besides these universal ones that follow. Anyone that's ever seen the CD sleeve for Lateralis knows this. And universal operations, I call them that are indeed bodily, are done by the senses and motions. For without these, it is impossible that the body could consist. But other operations are proper to the souls of men by art, sciences, studies, and actions. The senses also follow these operations, or rather are the effects or perfections of them. Understand, therefore, O son, the difference of operations. It is sent from above. But sense, being in the body, and having its essence from it, when it receiveth act or operation, manifesteth it, making it, as it were, corporeal. Therefore I say that the senses are both corporeal and mortal, and have so much existence as the body. For they are born with the body, and they die with it. But mortal things themselves have not sense, as not consisting of any such essence. For sense can be no other than a corporeal apprehension, either of evil or good, that comes to the body. But to external bodies, there is nothing comes, nothing departs. Therefore there is no sense in them. Thoth asks, does the sense therefore perceive or apprehend in every body? Hermes answers, in every body, O son. Thoth asks, and do the acts or operations work in all things? Hermes answers, even in things inanimate, O son, but these are differences of senses. For the senses of things rational are with reason, of things unreasonable, corporal only. But the senses of things inanimate are passive only according to augmentation and diminution. And this is an interesting concept as well, that, you know, the entire universe, a lot of people believe that it's sort of made of consciousness. I think that's got to be pretty close to the truth. But somebody, I can't remember who, and he was definitely a scientist of some kind. But he proposed that consciousness exists in everything, and that it's a matter of density. That like a rock has some degree of consciousness, but it's very dense, so it's like on the lowest end of the scale. For some reason that resonated with me, you know. And I think also that when indigenous people met the explorers, conquistadors, settlers, whatever, and they would say, no, the rock is alive, the issue was more one of communication breakdown. What they meant is that. But the brainwashed white man couldn't process that, and he just thought, okay, whatever, stupid, you know, native or whatever they thought. That's what I think. They you know, how well could they have understood each other? But passion and sense depend both upon one head or height, and are gathered together into the same by acts or operations. But in living whites, which are beings, there be two other operations that follow senses and passions, to wit, grief and pleasure. And without these, it is impossible that a living white, especially a reasonable one, should perceive or apprehend. And therefore I say that these are the ideas of passions that bear rule, especially in reasonable living whites. The operations work indeed, but the senses do declare and manifest the operations, and they being bodily, are moved by the brutish parts of the soul. Therefore I say they are both maleficial, I don't think we use that word anymore, or doers of evil. Maleficent, I think. We have evolved that word to be. For that which affords the sense to rejoice with pleasure is straightway the cause of many evils happening to him that suffers it. But sorrow gives stronger torments than anguish. Therefore, doubtless, they are both maleficent. The same may be said of the sense of the soul. Thoth asks, is not the soul incorporeal in the sense a body, Father, or is it rather in the body? Hermes answers, if we put it in a body, O son, we shall make it like the soul, or the operations, for these being unbodily, we say are in bodies. But sense is neither operation nor soul, nor anything else that belongs to the body. But as we have said, and therefore it is not incorporeal. Now let's finish. And if it not be incorporeal, it must be a body. For we always say that of these things that are, some are bodies and some are incorporeal. Now, when he says that sense is an operation and it's not incorporeal, that implies that just as consciousness is something that we could be attenuated to, that we're picking up from the universe rather than something that we're generating. It never really occurred to me that qualia also, that smell is something that exists in the universe as an operation that is like a fundamental, integrated, foundational thing. It's kind of a weird thought to think that the universal mind is like smelling us. But I think that would be the case if the universal mind is distributed throughout the universe. It's actually interesting to me to realize, I haven't thought too much about that when we say that consciousness is something that is like a field, that, I haven't really considered much what that would entail. Where is the receiver? How would the receiver process this level of information? And we can use Hermetic reasoning to deduce the answer, which would be that in the same way that we have sense limiting apparatus, right? We perceive 1% of the full spectrum of light, and presumably other things are filtered out in order to make our sensory load manageable, right? The universal mind must have some mechanism for doing the same thing. Unless you think of it as like an omniscient God, but I cannot see the evidence for that. That doesn't quite work for me. So it is an interesting thought. I had a Christian friend actually, and it was really strange, the circumstances under which this happened, man, because I was having a weird conversation with something, and he just showed up at my house completely dressed in white. And we were talking about something I'm not going to share, and he told me he'd eaten some mushrooms a couple days earlier, and he'd talked to God, and God was like, it's really strange to, even for me, to be in this position. And and he was like, well, yeah, what is it like? And he's like, well, the closest I could explain to you is that it's as if you had like 1 trillion computer screens all on at once, or TV screens all on at once. And, trying to process like how this could actually work, I've always thought of it more as sort of like a baseline operating system, and that the consciousness is more or less restrained by its duty to function as the laws of the universe, right? The frozen light is the body, and the laws of the mind. And so the reason that we don't pray for $1 million to fall out of the sky and it doesn't is that the universe, and if there's a God, it is constrained to operate within these strictures that are imposed by natural law. If it can't violate any of them. So, the idea that it actually has like a omnipresent awareness is interesting. I don't know how to deal with it. Shall we go into the 15th book? I have another stream scheduled. Let's see how many people we got. Uh-oh. Do we have people flooding the chat? Where are my mods? I say I have no wants. I'm of service. Oh no, it's okay. Nobody's flooding lunatic. Every now and then that happens, and it gets on my nerves. What is your opinion on plant spirits? Do you think psychedelic alkaloids are pheromones that allow communication with plant intelligence, or do they unlock pre-existing? Neither. Neither thing, actually, or both. I do not think that they are the spirit of the plant for a couple of reasons. For one thing, ayahuasca is a vine that grows in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. It shouldn't know about your mama and how to deal with your traumas, and you know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense. If you're connecting with a plant spirit, I'm not saying they don't have some kind of sentience. They absolutely do. Science has determined without a doubt, but they're just sitting there in the jungle, like, that's what it would be like, you're sharing consciousness with a plant. I think that they deactivate different bandwidth of our sensory filter, and so we are able to perceive a broader spectrum of light and probably more of our own subconscious. It basically puts you in a state where you have a more holistic mind. I'm not saying there's no influence from the energy of the plant, because there definitely seems to be, but further evidence of this is that if you take alkaloids from Syrian rue and acacia, and you take ayahuasca and chalipanga, there's a tiny difference, but that's due to entourage effects. It's, these plants don't even grow in the same habitat, and the effect is almost identical. So, and they're not even remotely related, any of them. So, I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows really what exactly like the DMT realm is. We all have ideas about it. I do know that I've received information from DMT entities and ayahuasca spirits probably a dozen or more times that is highly specific and absolutely accurate that no one possibly could have known, including information about Sirius. There was a third planetary body that they knew was there because of wobble when it rotated, made the star wiggle. And I got, the astrophysical details and all this stuff, and also some occult stuff that I later found in Blavatsky's students' writings and the Hopi and all over the planet. So it's not, excuse me, it's not just our mind. Also, the dialogue that occurs with ayahuasca, it's subjective, I know, but it does not feel like thinking. You can be literally stumped thinking about the last thing it communicated to you, and it has something else to say that shocks you. It's difficult to describe, but anyone that's experienced it knows it doesn't seem at all like you. It definitely feels like an interaction with some other, Another interesting aspect of this is that not once has any ayahuasca spirit or DMT entity told me anything that wasn't true, or to do anything evil or dumb, or 100% of the time it has been constructive, factual. So that's interesting too, because a lot of people kind of seem to think that it could be demonic or something, and I think that's really silly, because you are what you do. And there have been some bad incidents, and there always will be with ayahuasca. It can be dangerous, and it can cause bad psychological and emotional reactions. And I even wonder sometimes, even though I do host retreats myself, whether people should be really drinking it that aren't shamans, that haven't had the training, because in the old days, only the shaman drank the medicine, and then he just focused on the patient. This whole thing of drinking it with a bunch of strangers is not normal, and maybe not kosher. The one thing I can say about our events is that they're like 70% repeat people that I've known for years, almost every time. So it's at least not a bunch of strangers. There might be one or two new people every time, but and we are booking for events, by the way, for the next couple of months. So if you're interested in coming to the Sacred Valley and touring Incan ruins and experiencing various plant medicines, you can check out our reviews too on Facebook at Jungle Gnosis. Should we do this other book? How much time do I have? I got to look and see when I scheduled the next stream for, because I need at least a half hour to do like sound stuff and let's see, 9:30. All right, let's do it. Let me check back in. If you guys have any other questions or anything, I'm totally into chatting about stuff. You mentioned an experiment with a quantum number generator wherein thought affected outcome, but I can't find it. His name is, God damn it, you had to ask that, didn't you? He's from Harvard. Radin. Dean Radin? I'm pretty sure Dean Radin. The experiment got a Sigma 5 rating, which is the highest possible protocol evaluation that Harvard can bestow on people. So it's legit, for sure. He has an entire institute that does this kind of work, and I wasn't really sure whether to trust him or not because he was on that movie What the Bleep, and that movie was actually a sham. That scientist, Dr. Emoto, that is fake. It is completely fake. It's completely fake, and it's really easy to understand that those are snowflakes and not ice crystals, first of all. Second of all, the slide that where he said mean things to it is dyed. You can see the oils in it. It's like green and yellow and stuff. Go say shitty things to a bottle of water and see if it turns nasty colors. You cannot alter the experiment to make a point. You know what I mean? Like, that's not valid. It was totally fake. Everything about it was fake. And even some of the logic in that, I know I'm kind of going on a rant here, but I hate it when people do this. Even some of the logic doesn't make sense. That when you yell and scream at rice and it grows mold, that's a sign that the negative energy affected it. No, it's not. Mold is life. That's life. What the fuck are you talking about? It's life. The one that didn't grow mold can't support life. So, and people have repeated these experiments in proper scientific environment and nothing at all. And then, I've had some, like new agey housewives get mad at me because I've said this, and me and my son did it, and it's true. And it's like, okay, you took 2 bowls of rice and you had a 50-50 chance. That's not science, lady. It's not real. But anyways, even the physicists in that movie, if you watch the deleted scenes, they're like, we didn't say this shit. They edited it together to make it look like we were saying all these things. It's not even, none of us said any of this crap. So, he was in that movie, and that kind of, I was like, oh yeah, he's one of these flicks. But so was Hammeroff. And moral of the story, guilt by association isn't always fair. Some of the people in that movie were completely full of crap, and some of them were totally legit. And it's really unfortunate that people, people pay to be told things they want to believe, and the profit motive rules everything now. So, and people should have known better. It was made by Fox. All right, so here, let me check in the chat again and see if... Oh, yeah, that experiment was fake. Trust me, it was 100% fake. Raiden, R-A-I-D... Come on, man. You want me to type it for you, too? I mean... Here, I'll do this real quick. Wow, that was fucking mind-bendingly difficult. There you go. There's Dean Radin. There's Dean Radin and all of his books and research and parapsychology and conscious universe and all that stuff. Don't mean to be a smart ass, but come on, man. All right, the 15th book of truth. Should we wait till the next stream so that I can put this first? It might be good. Of truth, O Thoth, it is not possible that man, being an imperfect being, compounded of imperfect members and having his tabernacle, sounds dirty, consisting of different and many bodies, should speak with any confidence. But as far as it is possible, and just I say, that truth is only in eternal bodies, whose very bodies are also true. The fire is fire itself only, and nothing else. The earth is earth itself, and nothing else. The air is air itself, and nothing else. The water itself, and nothing else. But our bodies consist of all these, for they have of the fire, they have of the earth, and they have of the water, and air, and yet there is neither fire, nor earth, nor water, nor air, nor anything true. That was a good one. Man, that is a really good one. There's lots to unpack there, too, of course. If you study the Hermetic occult systems like the Golden Dawn, you'll see weird shit like fire of air and water of earth, and it's like, what is this nonsense? But, what happens if you apply fire to water? It becomes air, steam. If you freeze water, it becomes earth. It's hard. If you apply sufficient heat to metal, it will become water. Everything contains everything else and has within it the nature of everything else. And in our bodies, all of these things are manifest, but just as in the tree of life, where Keter is in Malkut, but Malkut is in Keter, but after another fashion. Elemental fire, elemental earth, elemental water, elemental air are not the same as the things exactly. Those are physical allegories for a more fundamental thing. And in our bodies, he's wrong that we don't have water, but he's not. What he means is the water is blood and it's tears, it's saline, it's in another. It's not exactly water, and fire is electromagnetism in our brains and other cellular operations and so on and so forth. There's all of these things are present in the body, but in another form. And what I was referencing with the tree of life earlier is that because light has, for its basis, some sort of physical entity, a photon, electromagnetic fields that generate it. And Keter, Malkut is the matter, which is also light in a standing wave. So Keter is in Malkut, but Malkut is in Keter, but after another fashion. And another thing that is said, that references, he says, nor anything true in the body. All of these things are false, and it's both true and false to say that they are true and false. And if you don't believe me, find a solid object and go get an electron microscope and point it at it, because it's not solid. Everything is true and everything is false, and there are no exceptions. If at the beginning our constitution had not truth, how could men see the truth or speak it or understand it? Only except God would. All things, therefore, upon earth, O Thoth, are not truth, but imitations of the truth. And yet not all things neither, for there are but few that are so. But the other things are falsehood and deceit, O Thoth, and opinions, like the images of the fancy or appearance. And when the fancy hath an influence from above, then it is an imitation of truth, but without the operation from above, it is left a lie. And as an image shews the body described, and yet is not the body of that which is seen, as it seems to be. Thank you for the sub, by the way. And it is seen to have eyes, but it sees nothing, and ears, but it hears nothing at all. And all other things hath the picture, but they are false, deceiving the eyes of the beholder, whilst they think they see the truth, and yet they are indeed but lies. And many, therefore, as see not falsehood, see the truth. That's facts. And there's probably an even greater number that think the falsehood that they see is the truth. Unawares. If therefore we do so understand and see everything, one of these things as it is, then we see and understand true things. But if we see or understand anything besides, or otherwise than that which is, we shall neither understand nor know the truth. Thoth asks, is truth therefore upon earth, O father? Hermes answers, thou dost not miss the mark, O son. Truth indeed is nowhere at all upon earth, O Thoth, for it cannot be generated or made. Truth is self-substantiating. But concerning the truth, it may be that some men to whom God will give the good seeing power may understand it. So that unto the mind and reason there is nothing true indeed upon earth. But unto the true mind and reason all things are fancies and or appearances and opinions. So Thoth asks, reasonably, must we not therefore call it truth to understand and speak the things that are? Hermes answers, but there is nothing true upon earth. Thoth, how can that be true? That we do not know anything true. How can that be done here? Hermes, O son, truth is the most perfect virtue and the highest good itself, not troubled by matter, not encompassed by a body, naked, clear, unchangeable, venerable, unalterable good. But the things that are here, O son, are visible, incapable of good, corruptible, passable, dissolvable, changeable, continually altered, and made of another. The things, therefore, that are not true to themselves, how can they be true? For everything that is altered is a lie, not abiding in what it is and being changed. It shows us always other and other appearances. Thoth asks, is not man true, O father? Hermes responds, as far north as he is man, he is not true, son. For that which is true hath of itself alone its constitution, and remains and abides according to itself, such as it is. But man consists of many things, and doth not abide of himself, but is turned and changed age after age, idea after idea, or form after form, and this while he is yet in the tabernacle. This is something Michael Levin talks about a lot, about our identity with our past, even though those stories don't really relate to anything at all. There's not a cell in our body that is the same. Those experiences are not here in the present moment. They're really in the nature of illusion. And yet, here we are in the tabernacle. And many have not known their own father after a little while, and many children likewise have not known their own parents. Is it then possible, O Thoth, that he who is so changed as is not to be known should be true? No, on the contrary, he is falsehood, being in many appearances of changes. But do thou understand the true to be that which abides the same and is eternal? But man is not ever, therefore not true. But man is a certain appearance, and appearance is the highest lie or falsehood. Thoth, but these eternal bodies, Father, are they not true, though they are changed? Hermes answers, everything that is begotten or made and changed is not true, but being made by our progenitor, they might have had true matter. But these also have in themselves something that is false in regard of their change. For nothing that remains not in itself is true. Thoth, what shall one say then, Father, that only the Son, which besides the nature of other things is not changed, but abides in itself, is truth? It is truth, and therefore is he only entrusted with the workmanship of the world. Damn, that was fucking G, Hermes. Ruling and making all things, whom I do both honor and adore his truth, and the other one, and first I acknowledge him the workman. Okay, so we're actually going to start the next stream at the beginning of this book because I can tell this has just got too much. It needs to start a stream, but I'm going to talk a little bit about this before we wrap things up because this is super, super, super important. Let me make my screen a little bit prettier for our closing arguments. Oops, that's not good. This goes here. That was wrong too. There we go. Hey there, buddy. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing, dude? Okay. So this changing, this falsehood, this lie, the one thought of Frater Perdurabo, which is hold on, let me remember the whole title. The Book of Lies is actually called The Falsifications of the Wandering Thought, The Falsifications of the One Thought of Perdurabo, which is in itself untrue. Also falsely called Breaks. That's an entire book based around this. That's why the reference. But the idea in all of the Hermetic traditions, people associate this with Aleister Crowley, but it was not his idea, really. The daemon, people say, but it's really daimonium. But we can say daemon, the higher self, the holy guardian angel, the higher genius, which in Jungian terms would be the higher self. You don't have to make it an entity if you don't like to. I generally don't tend to think of it that way. It could be our self perfected in the future. It could be a fundamental essence. We don't really know. Doesn't really matter. The point is, the reason the world is so fucked is that people have lost the knowledge that our MO should be knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, period, end of story. There is no other point to life. You must establish congruency with your purpose and live with every breath and every thought and every deed constrained to support that purpose. Otherwise, you will be unhappy and you will be a problem for yourself and others. To some extent, it's less and less dramatic to the point where it maybe doesn't even matter that much, But the person who is maybe neutral and just a normie but has no connection with this sense of purpose, unless that is their purpose, would be infinitely more extraordinary if they were aware that this was our purpose. Truth is self-substantiating. All else are but shadows. There are shadows, but then there is that which remains, And people talk about losing themselves. I've done it, lost track of my purpose and my will. And when that happens, and especially, let this be a warning to you, the further along the path you are and the more voltage you're carrying when this happens, the bigger the fucking mess is and the longer it takes to clean it up. So, walk with knowledge wisely, or else boom, bippity bop bop, bam, down the stairs, on your head you go, at best. So, when he was talking about that all evil comes from this change, and that there's a fundamental truth, like in the sun, that is the reason why he's been given dominion over this planet, because he's functioning in a pure state of operational awareness. He knows what he's doing, why he's doing it, how it's done, and he just does it, That's really the key to heaven. I mean, I'm not promising that it will be easy. In my own experience, it's like the universe supports me in ways that are uncanny to the extent that I can't imagine that it's not related to the fact that I am committed to this purpose. The thing is, it's not a act of will to be committed to that will. It is an organic process, and that's what you have to do. You cannot decide like, oh, I want to be this thing, and now I'm going to impose all these strictures upon myself and parameters, and I'm going to behave like this thing and become this thing. And you could convince yourself that you're supposed to be a painter when you should have been in medicine, and in that case, you'll be a terrible painter and you will fail. So you have to not focus. Pure will, uninfluenced by lust of result, is in every way perfect. So you must discover truly what your fundamental function is, and then pursue the thing. For myself, luckily, I was born stuck in it. I couldn't think about anything else. Just my orientation was completely and totally one track, and there's nothing I can do about it. So that has the benefit of, if you don't get in the way, which I did a lot, if you also, you guys, you got to work out your traumas before you acquire power. Otherwise, it's just not good. Another word of the wise. But yeah, that's the moral of the story here. And we will pick this back up at the beginning of book 15 in a couple of days, partly because I just realized that I'm going to play music probably until 3 in the morning, and I need to eat food or I'm going to die. So that's important. And let's see, sounds like what is written in Initiation into Hermetics, G, who forgot Franz. Pardon, I don't know who that is. Just checking the chat real quick, guys. This honestly assumed you were. How is this not getting? Okay, so I'll talk about that for a second. Any recent Siebel experiences? No, not recent. I mean, of course I've tried it, but not recently. No. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, okay. So he's asking about why the Dean Radin experiments haven't gotten much attention. Really, bud? I mean, I'm not trying to be condescending, but you know, and it's innocent, even maybe to be surprised by that. It makes sense, is what I'm saying. If you aren't very paranoid, I guess. The establishment, in my opinion, one of their main directives, their primary directives, is the suppression of the evolution of consciousness, and the whole entire paradigm of matrix reality has been engineered around reducing the ineffable to the mundane, to the level of the mundane. And that's because people that have their compass set can't be told what to do. They don't need to be told what to do. They don't need to be governed. They know they don't need to be governed, and that's not the kind of population that they're looking for. And so when Michael Levin finds evidence of non-neural intelligence, cognition at least, I should say, and Radin proves, legitimately that consciousness can influence subatomic particles, and then we have these things happening with adaptations in animals that are response-driven that defy neo-Darwinism. That all suggests something that the establishment has been working very, very hard to ensure that people do not see. That's why they didn't like psychedelics, and that's why they have really pushed this consumerism, materialist paradigm, because if the people are disconnected from a sense of purpose and from the universal mind, really when we talk about the experiences of meditation or psychedelics or whatever it is, and people have these transcendental experiences and then they become better people. Transcendental experience is really just an experience of the holistic mind with the filters down. That's it, And we all know what that experience does for people, So no, they're not. Let's put it this way: Levin is so suppressed, even though he's on big podcasts and stuff. But we have echo chambers, social media tunnel vision, right? I have seen over the last couple of years many groups of researchers announcing that they have discovered things that he has discovered 15 years ago. I'm not a scientist. Why do I know that and they don't? You know what I mean? If you watch my debunk of Professor Dave and Billy Carson simultaneously, it's pretty wild, because why do I know a bunch of stuff that Professor Dave, he would stop Carson and say, this is a bunch of bullshit. And usually he was right, because Carson is full of shit. But oftentimes Dave was completely wrong. And these are old experiments, Levin's work from 13 years ago that he apparently has no clue has happened. So the tunnel vision echo chamber thing from social media is very real. And what it is occulting from people, what it is hiding from people right now, is that it's not that there is a new paradigm emerging. A new paradigm has already fucking emerged. The whole shit is over. It's, and they basically, these like brothers of the left-hand path have got people just like hypnotized, not, they have tunnel vision. They're just staring at Donald Trump and Joe Biden and whatever the fuck, and they're just, they don't see anything else. But yeah, science has established without a doubt that neo-Darwinian evolutionary theory is at least incomplete, if not wrong, for sure. Cognition is not dependent upon memory either, upon neurons. In fact, the ability to recognize relatives isn't even dependent upon fucking neurons. I mean, think about this. We have trees and other plants that can diagnose an illness in a relative, know it's a relative, and prioritize the relative, and send them the minerals and bugs they need to get better. No neurons, none. Our doctors aren't even that good, you know? And we've been brainwashed to believe this is all bullshit. Why? You know why. You know why. To keep us all dependent on big pharma, to keep us all fucking lost and programmable. You know, it's much more difficult to program something that's already running its own program. You know, much easier to start with a blank slate. If you don't believe that, find some like heavily politically indoctrinated person and try to talk some sense into them. Good luck. Contrarily, find someone who has never been politically indoctrinated, and you'll probably find that they already have sense in them and don't need it talked into them. Oh, nice. Yeah. Franz Badron, I have not heard of. Okay, appreciate you guys. I'm hungry. I appreciate likes and also subs and patrons. We need patrons because that's how we are able to justify putting time into this. And you get a lot of stuff if you become one. And also our events. You can email me if you're interested in attending. And also I hope to see you all at the stream that I'm doing to raise money because I need 4 surgeries, and we have just taken on a big old property and had to cancel events and stuff. So it's not great that all that has happened, but you know, pressure makes diamonds. So 10 toes in, stand on your business. There are options to support in every video description, also via PayPal and Zelle and whatnot, and in the chat too. And I appreciate you guys so much. I hope this was great, and I know that the last one, I think it's the last one, the book 15 is going to be a lot better than this one. I mean, this had some moments, but there was a lot of just, you know, weird, just talking too much about one thing, you know, but I committed to reading every word, so that's what I'm doing. Anyways, good night, guys. Hopefully I'll see you all in about an hour.